Welcome to the Timescales Interviews. I'm Grego, your host, and today I have a very special guest, none other than Brendan Noble. Hi, Brendan. How are you today?
Hiya. Well, thank you for inviting me. I'm fine. We've just finished a show, so I'm kind of, full of adrenaline.
Yeah. It's when creating content can kind of get the endorphins running. And I was in the chat area of your show
Yeah.
there, and very much enjoyed it. And we're going to talk about that new show here in just a second. Now, this is being recorded in California and in the United Kingdom, I believe. Are you in the UK?
Yes, yes. And the
Okay.
northeast of England.
Okay. You have a little bit of a different accent of a number of British people that I've spoken with before. It almost sounds, if I can I guess? Is it okay to guess?
Yeah, you of course you can.
Is it Irish?
No,
Okay, let me think. Is it just a regional? Uh,
it's a regional English accent. Yeah.
really? Okay. Well, you have a really nice voice, and I
What's
if
really, what's really funny is I used to teach in Australia for about 6 years, and there were rumors at work. The head of English, I was an English teacher, and the head of English, with it being a private school, was asking all the kids, "How's that new teacher?" And they said, "Oh, do you mean the Irishman?"
oh
And
really?
then yeah, for some reason, especially Australians, Canadians, Americans, they seem to think this accent is Irish. It's a lively accent. It's the northeast, so there's Newcastle above me. You go down the coast a bit, and it's called Middlesbrough. Now Middlesbrough is where Captain Cook came from, and Gene Roddenberry, of course, had he named a lot of the ships after some of the ships that Captain Cook used when he went around the world. So Middlesbrough is famous for Captain Cook, Captain James Cook, Captain
Okay.
James Kirk, Jim
Right.
Kirk.
Right.
So that's where I'm from, Middlesbrough. But I've lived in Australia, Manchester, Birmingham. So basically, I think my accent has shifted.
Okay. Well, this is great to be talking to you because I've seen you on screen so many times, especially here in the last month or so with your new show, and it's really cool to be talking to you. And I think it's very interesting to see someone who has just started a new Doctor Who channel on YouTube, and apparently for someone to do something like that, they would probably be a Doctor Who fan. And so before we get to Doctor Who, let me just ask you so that watchers and listeners can get to know you a little bit. Um,
Yeah.
tell us a little bit about yourself. What's an average day in life like for you? What do you do in your spare time? Hobbies? Anything like that.
Yeah. I mean, it's just changed because I've done that great moment that we all wish for, the moment you retire.
Oh,
So,
nice.
yeah, so I was an English teacher for 30 years. I've used it to travel the world to a degree, um, and enjoyed it, and had lots of different positions going all the way deputy head of year, safeguarding, pastoral. So the job was quite dominant there. Obviously, I got to know Doctor Who fans along the way, some of the kids who liked it, etc. I obviously like travel. I like my politics. I like a good political chat. I like theatre. I like cinema. Um, Obviously, as an English teacher, you'd expect it. I like books. I now collect a lot of Doctor Who stuff, but only at the amateur level, the character options, figurines. Um, I'm, I, I learned a lot of my English. I always say to kids at school, I learned a lot of my English, the difficult, complex, technical words from the Doctor Who Target book range, which I've got every one and I proudly do. Um, because you learn, especially when they're made up concepts and made up words, you learn to prefixes and suffixes. And I learned so much. I mean, being about six, when it was Genesis of the Daleks, and you were learning words like Genesis, insubordination, and you have to go to a dictionary and you have to learn how to spell it. So um, that's always been there in the background. The Doctor Who toys, collectors, collection editions, the books, travel. Um, yeah, and now having retired only a few months ago, I didn't think I was going to do this actually, a YouTube channel. I thought I was going to do other things, but I ended up starting a YouTube channel.
Okay. Now, I remember when you started up, and I have tried to catch as many shows as I can.
Yeah.
Some of the time I have a volunteer gardening job that I'm doing in the morning, which kind of falls into the same time slot. But if I miss the
Yeah.
live stream, I will go back, and I believe I've seen every one of them. And I've seen your show, even as short as it's been. I've seen it kind of coming to its identity. I've seen you get more relaxed in
Yeah.
doing it, and I want to go into the technical details there about what it actually takes for somebody to start a YouTube channel, particularly in Doctor Who fandom. Um, but I'm wondering your travels. Where have your travels taken you?
Well, it was funny when I was at university in Manchester, training to be a teacher. Um, all the lads who I knew said, "Do you want to come to the pub for a night out? There's a there's a quiz on." And went to the quiz, and believe it or not, we won the quiz, and we won tickets to interrail tickets around Europe. So that was one version. We interrailed around Europe, focused on Italy, Switzerland, Belgium, Luxembourg. We traveled everywhere via train. So that was one travel bug that was fed. I was lucky enough, always lucky enough, that my parents, when I was 21, finishing university, said, "Do you want a big party? Do you want a big gift? Because we've got another idea. Would you like an open air ticket to Australia?" We had a few relatives in Australia. Of course, I took that one. So I spent a year backpacking around Australia. And of course, that was life changing. I kept diaries of it. I want to do I want to do something with the diaries one day because I think there's a script there. There's a novel there. So yeah, traveled around Europe, interrailing, backpacked around Australia. And once I got Australia into my skin, I've been going back quite regularly. And there's a lot more family there too. So Far East, Singapore, Thailand, Malaysia, etc. Started to dabble there as well. So I've missed America so far, not for any particular reason, but so far there was a wedding in Canada, so we went to Canada, went to British Columbia. But I do have to do America, and part of my degree was politics and international relations. I really need to get to Washington. I really do want to get to America.
Oh, Washington, D.C. is an absolutely interesting city. Uh, really good food. Yeah,
Yeah,
a lot of people wouldn't think of Washington, D.C. and immediately think of food, but
yeah,
there are some absolutely outstanding restaurants there and a really wide range. And please do come to America and look me
oh,
up. I will be happy to show you around.
oh, I tell you what. Well, I'd love. I mean, obviously, I need to get to your part of the world as well. I have to say, it's obviously on my tick list big time. And yes, I appreciate that invitation. This is the thing about anything to do with YouTube or any of these shows, isn't it? Is the friends you make and the contacts. It's fantastic.
It's amazing. It is absolutely amazing, and just in the Doctor Who realms, fandom, it's incredible to look back at how things have changed over just the last couple of decades, with the internet making it to where we can do something like we're doing right now. You know,
Yeah,
if it were not for high-speed internet to allow video streaming, you and I wouldn't be able to meet like this, a half a world apart, and talk to each other. And it is really fun, the friends that can be made in not only Doctor Who fandom, but just online in general. And that's how I met my wife. If it
yeah.
hadn't been for the internet, I would have never met this beautiful lady from Japan. And 20, 30 years ago, things like that were not really that possible. Do you remember when the internet first had sound and pictures? How amazing that was?
I do because we were in a staff meeting. The head teacher, who was an old-fashioned style teacher, you'd expect, early 1990s, and he did a staff meeting and he said, I need to show you something called the World Wide Web.
Oh, there
You
we
know,
go.
yeah. And he had to
And
say the whole phrase. And then I was intrigued because it was the first time you were looking at a script, as a typed script, and you saw this blue section with an underline, and you thought, oh, if you touch that, it takes you somewhere else.
right.
And yeah, I remember that distinctly.
That reminds me of when a friend of mine was introducing me to the internet back in the 90s, and something had changed to where it used to be that, first of all, Google didn't exist yet, and
Yeah.
any search engines that did exist were not very large because there really
Mm.
wasn't a whole lot to search. And
Yeah.
it used to be, in order to find things, you would have to type http://www dot and then the rest of it.
Yeah.
And at some point, something changed where you didn't have to type all of that anymore. You could just type the domain name. It would go directly there. So when he was teaching, he kept typing http:// www dot blah blah. And I remember one point somebody in the class told him, "Hey, do you know that you don't have to type all of that anymore?" And this was back in the time of dial-up modems, and as far as forums were concerned,
Yeah.
Usenet. Do you remember Usenet?
Well, I see, I remember getting told off by my parents because obviously I'd be working in my study at home and they'd be going, what's all this? You've been on the computer for too long. And you're going, oh, I didn't realize it cost. And then you realize that,
Oh,
all that sort of thing. I mean, you talking about the HTTP thing, it's funny, isn't it? We've gone from learning basic computers at school to and computer speak and computer language and the HTTP and all the rest of it, and even the same World Wide Web and www. You don't have to do any of that now. You just put in a search word, don't you? You don't have to do anything that looks like computer speak anymore.
right, right. Okay, so let's jump up to Doctor Who. Tell us about the beginnings of what would cause someone to create a new Doctor Who YouTube channel. Do you remember perhaps when you first saw it? And do you have a doctor by any chance?
Yes, it as you probably know, talking to Doctor Who fans, it's always your first one. It's John Pertwee was my first one. So I was a small child. John Pertwee was on the third Doctor, and he was like a granddad figure to me. He was only in his 50s, and that's where I am now. But he seemed very old. But he was very authoritarian, not authoritarian. He was very kind of commanding, had a safe pair of hands, so to speak. And I remember being scared, and you felt safe when they went back to the TARDIS. I remember him facing the Sea Devils, and when we live on the coast, and going to the coast, I struggled for a while as this little 3 or 4 year old because the Sea Devils come out of the sea in one of the episodes, and so that was vivid. The
Wow.
Daleks, yeah, I know that. And the houses then, big terraced houses, and of course you'd light we had power cuts and all the usual stuff in the early 70s. So basically, your mum and dad might light up the lounge you were in. But if you wanted the toilet, like I said, I was only 3 or 4, you wanted the toilet and you just watch the Sea Devils and it's a dark hallway. No way was I moving. And so I just remember how it really infected your dreams. So you started to think if that monster came into the house, if I saw that monster come round the street, and you imagined all these scenarios of how you would escape them and all the rest of it. So I think the imagination was just fired up so brilliantly by that program. That after that I was won over and addicted to it. That every Saturday night I would be there. Grandstand, our sports program would finish, quick bit of news, and then you were set up for 25 minutes to think, how scared will I get? They always talk about being behind the settee. I was never behind the settee.
Right.
No, I was facing it out on my own. But your parents would be making your tea or evening meal in the other room, and you would be sat there transfixed and maybe frozen stiff, scared of moving. The Daleks have always really done it for me, though. Really have. We were lucky in the early 1970s when Doctor Who was very, very popular. I know it's hard to compare to when it's David Tennant and Matt Smith, but I do remember in our local town hall, and there was a national tour of John Pertwee, the Third Doctor, and the Doctor Who exhibition. And in our town hall in the crypt, they had the exhibition. And we had to queue for 2 or 3 hours to get in. Now, I was about 4 or 5, and my little brother, who hates Doctor Who, has always hated Doctor Who, was about 3. And so, of course, it was a family event for me, not him. You know, that went down well. And so we queued and queued. And as we descended the stairs and went into the Doctor Who exhibition in the crypt, my mum and dad kept saying, you do know that the Daleks have actors inside and they're not real and it's okay. And I'm going, oh, yes, I know it's pretend. I know it's pretend. We get down the stairs. The first big room is the control room for the Daleks. And they've got 2 or 3 Dalek props just on simple tram lines. And then you had this booming voice of the Daleks. And then they moved towards you. Well, I just ran like the wind. I ran and I refused to go back into the exhibition. So I missed the whole thing.
Really? And how old were you?
About 4 or 5.
Okay. Wow.
They could not persuade me. They could not convince me. I said, don't you realize all you lot are going to die? I cannot go back in there. So,
you know, there's the typical thing of kids hiding behind the sofa or the couch in fear of the Daleks, which you'll hear those stories commonly with people in our age range. But of course here I don't know that it was even on the air in the 70s. I caught it on PBS when they were airing Horror of Fang Rock. And the reason being is that back then, this would have been the late 70s. Back then, the only sci-fi on US television to speak of was Star Trek. And it had ended, a decade earlier. So it was all reruns in syndication. And we had since there was no internet, we had paper magazines, which were called TV Guide. And my father used to subscribe to TV Guide. We would get it in the mail once a week, a little paper magazine. And it was really the only thing you had to go on to find out what was going to be on TV, where you would need to be there while it was aired to sit down. We didn't have a VCR. They were extremely expensive back then. And I remember searching for science fiction, and there was something that said, I think it said British sci-fi Doctor Who, and we only had like 3 or 4 channels, and it was on the public broadcasting channel, which was typically known for animal documentaries. And I tuned in one night, and it was Horror of Fang Rock. And I remember this guy with fuzzy hair and crazy looking eyes with his companion Leela at the time, and it was really scary. Now I couldn't understand the British accents, but it was the Horror of Fang Rock was disturbingly scary. And that being said, I have never heard of someone who was terrorized by the sea devils. And with you living close to the ocean and being young like that is that's very interesting to hear. It seems as if they were extremely realistic to you at the time.
Yeah, I mean, that's why I did a show recently on the Sea Devils. There's talk they might come back, and again, I don't want them spoiled, because the netted physique that they had in the early 1970s is the one that really, I think, you know, every show they adapt the monsters, they adapt characters, they kind of try and, you know, update, so to speak, sometimes CGI it or something. But if you lose the essence of the original, then don't do it. And there's something about that string vest sort of thing that they were wearing. Um, I mean, the CGI in the recent one with Jodie Whittaker was okay, and it went a little bit back towards how they were. But no, seeing about 8 sea devils come out of the water and come at you. I mean, it's been replicated again, hasn't it? They've had the Marshmen in Full Circle with the Tom Baker Doctor. They had the Curse of Fenric when they had those kind of vampiric monsters come out of the water. It's been replicated because it was so vivid. And of course, the people who are writing the show now are just a bit older than me, and so these memories are the same and they're shared. The Sea Devils is one where people were scared of the water. That's the one there. Cybermen, I was scared of them coming around the corner in the street, you know, because you can imagine them patrolling a lot more. Daleks, I was, as I've just said, very scared of, but I always knew the stairs would save me. So if I was in my bedroom, I'm sorted. So I had on my little priority list of where I was most in danger. Daleks scared me to death, but if I had the stairs, I was safe. Cybermen, there's a lot of them. They'll come around the corner in the street. Sea devils don't go in the sea.
Okay. Now, it was in it was in speaking of the stairs, it was in New Who where I think the episode might have actually just been titled Dalek. It was that there was a modern episode, as in since 2005, where all of the sudden the Dalek croaked elevate, and then I started busting up laughing. I could not believe the simplicity of how come the Daleks couldn't have always elevated, but apparently there was a classic episode where they could do that. Do you recall that?
Yes, it was Sylvester McCoy. It was Remembrance of the Daleks. I think it's 19.
88.
Oh gosh, yeah,
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 I think it's
mid
88.
yeah, 87, 88 it was. I think it was the 25th anniversary of Doctor Who, so it might be 88.
Okay.
And it was the first one of the series, and it was Remembrance of the Daleks. And there was a moment when he was in another basement, and he started running up the stairs, and then this kind of hover Dalek starts slowly going up the stairs. It took forever to exterminate him, so we had plenty of time to get out. But the shock value was the Daleks can now hover.
Okay. Now I do not recall that. And I do know that I have seen that episode, but I must not have been paying
Can I
enough
just
attention.
can I just say, you know, you mentioned the horror fan Rockville is the one that really got you.
Yeah.
Being from San Francisco area, I mean, everybody, and I know it's a stereotype, but I want to go and see San Francisco. Fog coming in, the booming sound of a lighthouse. I mean, I wonder if it kind of just triggered things because it's classic, that isn't it?
You know what? That is something I have never thought about. And that right there, that is interesting because what you were saying about living near the coast and being
Yeah,
terrified by the sea devils, it is extremely possible that that episode affected me a little bit strongly because of the fog and the lighthouse. And the
yeah,
fog, by the way, has a name. People call the fog Carl. There's
yeah.
several different ideas as to why that is. I'm not sure which one's correct, but and then the bridge itself
Yeah.
has a fog horn, or it used to be called a siren, a fog horn, where you can't see anything, but you'll hear the just
Mm,
ooh. So
mm,
you know that's interesting, Brendan. I had never thought of that before, and you know, with the horror of Fang Rock, I was expecting something sci-fi, as in spaceships and shoot 'em ups and laser guns and all that,
mm,
Star Wars
yeah.
type of sci-fi. And with the Doctor, I think what was interesting to me was that he was just so much smarter than everyone around. And even though they were in a scary, potentially deadly situation,
Mm,
uh, he had this calm, And then the companion Leela seemed to not really be too scared of the situation because she knew it was in control. And like I said, I couldn't understand what anybody was saying because I couldn't understand British accents, and I did not know that Leela was a companion until I started to watch
Mm.
more episodes. You know, it's made me wonder, what would life be like if I hadn't turned on the TV that night? I might have
And
missed.
what time of the day it was? Because I think that when you mentioned Star Trek, it's interesting because Star Trek in Britain at that time was on at 7 p.m.
Okay,
And obviously that means I'm a bigger boy, I'm a bit older. And
right.
so I was allowed to maybe stay up because it would finish at 7:50 or 8 o'clock at night. Whereas Doctor Who was on at 5:25, 5:15. So of course, what's really weird is as a younger child, I was brought into the orbit of Doctor Who before Star Trek because Star Trek was seen as an older show. So what's weird is when we talk about how it kind of grab kids when they're young. Doctor Who grabbed me because it grabbed my imagination and it was accessible because it was tea time. Now, when you saw Horror Fan Rock, what time of day would that have been?
I'm pretty sure it was late. I'm wanting to say about 7, which was late
Right?
for us at the time, because bedtime was typically about 9.
Yeah,
And I'm thinking it was definitely after dark, when those
that's
started
key.
coming on. And with PBS, I don't think they did this with Horror Fang Rock when I watched it, but I'm thinking that the people at PBS may not have understood the stories either, and it could have possibly been from the accents because they would air the stories out of order. So
Okay.
they really wouldn't make very much sense. But uh, y- let me ask you about companions
Yeah,
with Louise Jameson, absolutely outstanding actor, uh, and she's even been in Doctor Who recently and does some wonderful voices for the Big Finish audios. Um,
yeah,
Going back to your John Pertwee era uh, initiation into
yeah.
Doctor Who when you first started watching it. Um, was Joe Grant perhaps the companion as performed by the absolutely awesome Katie Manning?
Yes. So
Oh,
I
wow.
don't know Liz Shaw. I didn't know Liz Shaw. She was just too early for me as a kid. So I started to properly see Doctor Who from it was around the Sea Devils, it was around Day of the Daleks, it was around that 1972 to 1973 period. So Joe Grant was the first companion I knew. And of course, it wasn't too long after that I had to deal with her departure in The Green Death. And I remember watching that, and it was so well acted on both sides. It was a good story that you could see that the third Doctor was upset that she was leaving and getting married, and you could see that she was sad. And you're a little kid, you're learning a lot about life from these programs. It's a bit like the death of your first pet. You learn about death, and in this case, you learn that things don't last. And it was so sad. I remember how sad that story was with Joe Grant. But what was nice was, as a little kid, that Joe Grant wasn't all knowing, did get scared. So it is true that they say the companion is there as your cipher, is for the audience. And as a little kid, I could relate to Joe being confused, thinking things were too difficult, being scared. So she was reflecting what I was thinking as a little kid. So Katie Manning did that very well. And it was a really good relationship those two had. So Joe Grant was the first one. And yeah, I remember her leaving vividly. That was really clear to me that because that was sad. As a kid, you used to being scared and all the rest of it, but to see this sad moment in Doctor Who, they haven't really done much of it even since. Really, that was just a very sad exit.
You know, I have this ongoing joke where I always like to say, "You British people have all the fun," in the Doctor Who circles online. And I had the opportunity of saying that to somebody as recently as yesterday. But it seems that you guys do. You know, we'll have conventions here, which are considerably different. They're very heavy
Yeah,
on cosplay, and
yeah,
I believe that the origins of cosplay at U.S. conventions goes back to the public broadcasting service, the PBS channels, because when they were broadcasting Doctor Who in the late 70s, early 80s, they were having to purchase these tapes or rent the tapes or lease them or whatever. They were having to pay the
yeah.
BBC to be able to get the content and to broadcast it on television. So, in order to do that, they would reach out to fans and viewers and ask them for pledges. And they would have a pledge drive where they would basically raise money in order to get more Doctor Who episodes. And some of the time, the pledge drives were actually longer than the actual broadcast of the program itself.
Yeah,
So take Horror of Fang Rock, for example. I believe one episode is somewhere around 30 minutes or something like that. And then they would have like an hour of
wow.
fundraising in between the next one, and everybody was in cosplay. And I think that may be the origins of cosplay in the U.S. conventions, but there's not really a lot of U.S. conventions. There's a couple that have become rather large, but it
Mm.
seems like in England or the UK that you guys have something almost every weekend, and I was uh, not really joking and saying that you British people have all of the fun. It just seems like there's something constant going on, and I'm wondering, do you participate in all of that? Do you go to conventions?
We're too spoiled. I mean, you know, I can mention the Longleat, the famous, the Woodstock of Doctor Who.
Longleat. We're going to
I
talk
can,
about Longleat here in a second.
yeah, don't worry. So there was that one. I helped out last year in April in a Blackpool one. Um, a few Doctor Who fans were doing their first ever convention, and Blackpool they picked, and Colin Baker and Nicola Bryant went to that one. Talking about we're lucky in England with the amount of little conventions. Can I just tell you that I looked after Colin Baker that day, and I looked after his money. He's a very trusting person, but he did the autographs. You know, he did the autographs and the photographs, and so I sat next to him and handled the credit cards and all the cash. And when I was talking to him, he said, I mean, obviously it was the 60th year last year of Doctor Who, but he was busy for about 48, 47 weekends of the year. And so that meant there were
Really?
about 47 or 48 conventions going on in different parts. I mean, what a pension for the classic doctors to just really enjoy that year. But the other thing I noticed is that while I was sat there, you know, just quietly taking the money while he dealt with each fan, is that he knew a lot of them and he'd seen them 3 weeks ago or a couple of months ago. And they were able to talk to him saying, remember me in Scarborough? Do you remember me when I was in Leeds? And so there are so many conventions in Britain that actually the actors get to know some of the fans. And there's actually almost like a loyalty thing. So that's what intrigued me. The amount of I'm a lightweight compared to some of these fans. These fans, you could go and see one Doctor Who actor or another. You could go and see them if you wanted to travel the UK. You could see an actor every week. I would have said apart from Christmas.
Okay. Now, if you were handling the money for Colin Baker, apparently you met Colin Baker, right?
Yeah, 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 yeah.
Okay. Have you ever met Katie Manning?
I haven't, unfortunately. No, I'd love to talk to her, and I know she's lovely, but no, I haven't.
Yeah, she seems like an ambassador of goodwill for Doctor Who. She
Yeah,
is energetic, positive, and everyone that I have met who has met her has had just the kindest things to say. Now, if you've met Colin Baker, have you met other people who worked on the original run?
I went to a Newcastle convention where we talked. We had time with Sylvester McCoy. We
Mhm.
talked to him. We paid. You know, you have a group of about 8 of you, and you ask him questions. So we had about an hour with Sylvester McCoy. The Blackpool convention last year, we were with Nicola Bryant and Colin Baker all day. And so we had a few chats with them. At the Newcastle convention, there were a few people from behind the scenes, you know, the first the first Cyberman actor, and various people had photographs with William Russell, the first companion, Ian Chesterton, met the 1980s TARDIS team, you know, Janet Fielding, Sarah Sutton, Matthew Waterhouse. So there's some as a lot of fans get used to. You've got a photograph with them, you have a fleeting moment with them. There were some 1960s companions, Peter Purvis, who played Stephen Taylor. We had Anneke Willis, who played Polly. And of course, the great one was Ian Chesterton, because he's really old now. So I've briefly seen a lot of them, had a formal chat with Sylvester McCoy, but had managed to have some nice little moments with Colin Baker and Nicola Bryant throughout the day last year in April, Blackpool.
Okay, and I'm sorry, which convention is this that you're speaking of last year?
Right, last year, so my friends had organised it. It was called Invasion. So it was around late April in Blackpool. It was a one-day event, because it's obviously, when you're setting up your first ever convention, it's easier and maybe cheaper to just organise a one-day full event than a kind of overnight and a second day. But it was full on. Louise Jameson was due to come to that one, but as you know, she works in a soap opera now. So last minute, bless her, she was really, you know, apologetic and said, I can't make it. But yeah, we had Nicola Bryant and Colin Baker all day, and it was very, very popular. We had people driving down from Scotland. This is it. There's an awful lot of conventions, but not as many in the north of England. And of course, you've got a whole populace there who can't always afford to go down to London for a day trip or pay the hotel prices. So to have a convention in the north of England, we were grabbing people from Glasgow and various parts of Scotland and parts of the north of England that wouldn't normally go to a convention. And to see the kids again dressed as Matt Smith with a fez on, to see them all with their various costumes, to see them with their sonic screwdrivers, to see the Davos character who goes around in his wheelchair, the multicolored one. We had all that. It was great. And there were loads of fans who create costumes. There was this lad, it was absolutely amazing. He made the Emperor Dalek from the 1960s. And I don't know which shot I preferred. He set it up, obviously, the lighting, the electronics, and it was on display for the whole day. But I think I've got a photograph somewhere. I like the shot when he unpacked the Emperor Dalek and put it back in his van to take away. And it was so funny to see the Emperor Dalek in the back of some van. It's quite good.
Okay, now I want to ask you about Longleat. And Longleat, I believe you were at Longleat 93?
Yeah, 83, okay. Yeah.
Oh, 83. 83. Okay. Yeah. Now, I have a videotape of a documentary of that. Yeah. And I remember it was one of the first British PAL format videotapes that I ever added to my collection. And I had previously had to learn the hard lesson that in order to play a PAL videotape in the United States, you have to have a PAL VCR. And those were not very common here. And it was really expensive to get one shipped from England. And then I also learned shortly after it arrived that you also have to have a PAL television. So after a rather large investment on being able to watch British TV in the US in the late 80s, early 90s, I saw the Longleat convention. I'm calling it a documentary, and it was unbelievable to me how much fun that looked like. I couldn't believe that people could actually meet the actors that were in the television series.
Unlike nowadays, everything gets more commercial. We know there was a discussion between the actors. I think it was Elizabeth Sladen who was Sarah Jane Smith, and she met, was it Carrie Fisher? And they had the discussion about, don't you charge for autographs? And you know, it became much more commercial. But this is in the time when Longleat House is a beautiful stately building, massive grounds, and it just seemed that the whole grounds and the outside of the stately home was taken over by Doctor Who fans and marquees everywhere. And what was amazing was you could walk around from marquee to marquee. You need marquees because of the British weather in April. You have to make sure you don't get rained on. So basically,
okay, I'm sorry, Brendan. What is a marquee?
It's like a giant tent, really.
Oh, okay,
Yeah.
okay.
And so you go from tent to tent. One's called a merchandise tent. One's called the, I can't remember what the tent was where panel tent. And that's where you saw the actors on stage. But in between moving from one to the other, you might walk into Patrick Troughton, or you might walk into Peter Davison, or many of the companions then. It was like the Territorial Army were walking with them. But it wasn't like you had armed guards, and it wasn't like you had security guards. It was just they were walking with them. I've got so many photographs of, oh, there's Peter Davison. Oh, there he is. And yeah, he was swarmed by people. And so you were bumping into the top actors of your program near a water fountain or near the coffee shop for the one marquee. You know, it was absolutely amazing. And that wouldn't happen now.
Wow. So which of the actors that performed the Doctor have you met?
Well, there's a short story to this. My dad decided, and my mum and dad knew I was begging to go to Longleat, but I was only 13. So, of course, 13-year-olds can't travel across country on a train. And it would have been lots of connections to get to Longleat. And then you'd have to get a taxi. I mean, it's pretty impossible to get from the northeast to the southwest, and also would cost a lot of money. So, of course, my mum and dad said, it's not possible. You can't go to Longleat. But it was on the telly every night. The adverts were ridiculous. So, in the middle of the night, oh, well, I'm like, yeah, for me, it was the middle of the night as a kid. But basically, it's about 12 midnight. My dad woke me up and said, we're going to Longleat and get ready. And so we had a small estate car. And so we drove down quite a long way overnight. We didn't have tickets, and we got to Longleat House in the stately grounds. And in those days, there was no gate. There was no nobody checking you. We drove and parked next to Longleat House, right next to it, and then slept for the next couple of hours since we'd driven all night. And then, as the daylight dawned and all the rest of it, we heard noise, and the ticket booth and all that stuff was being built behind us. We were seen as staff. So basically, and I know it's terrible to say, but if that's the Woodstock of Doctor Who, me and my dad got in for free. And so I was lucky in the first place to go, but I'm even luckier that we didn't even pay. We were already in. So you said which actors had I met? Patrick Troughton was in the panel when I was there. And he stood right next to me for a while, talking to some strange fans. And then Peter Davison came and launched it. And John Pertwee came in shortly afterwards. And we listened to 3 panels. You were supposed to clear each tent, after each panel. So if Patrick Troughton did his question and answer, you're supposed to leave. You'll find if you watch that video, me and my dad are there for 3 panels. And we loved it. And Patrick Troughton was interesting because as a kid, I knew obviously by the age of 13 who Patrick Troughton was. He was the second Doctor, and I'd seen all the photographs, but he just looked a little bit older, of course. And so he was stood almost right next to me in between panels. And my dad nudged me and he said, that's Patrick Troughton, that's the second Doctor. And of course, you're then in awe of him. And so I was just earwigging, I was just listening to him talk to other fans who recognized him. And I remember, you see, Longleat is good in one respect, and in another, I thought, oh God, I hope my dad didn't say that, because in the good respect, you realized you weren't on your own, that you weren't the only fan in the world, that you weren't a freak. Suddenly, you realized there were loads of people who loved Doctor Who. And we've got one photograph where you just see all the cars and all the people who couldn't get in. I mean, there was an announcement halfway through the day on the radio, on the national radio, saying, don't go to Longleat. It's over full, capacity used up. They were telling people to turn back. So this is how lucky we were. But I remember when Patrick Troughton was talking to these fans, it was a married couple, and they said they'd met through Doctor Who. But their story, because Patrick Troughton said, really? It's on at 5:15. And they had this concocted story that they met each other, fell in love, and married because of the Patrick Troughton Doctor. I was a 13-year-old who, as you know, you always get embarrassed by your elders. I was sat there thinking, I hope my dad's not listening to this because this is a little bit embarrassing. But you know, you take it all. But Patrick Troughton, my dad loved Patrick Troughton. My dad watches Doctor Who, but he's not a fan like me. But he's a fan of Patrick Troughton, and he said he's a brilliant character actor. I've seen him in loads of stuff, and my dad was really impressed that we were next to Patrick Troughton.
Wow, that's awesome. My grandmother and I used to watch Doctor Who together, and we started, as I mentioned, with the Tom Baker era, and then we witnessed the regeneration, where neither of us had any clue whatsoever that the actor could change in Doctor Who. But I had gotten hold of a videotape with Patrick Troughton through a fan trading network. You know, back when we didn't have the internet, there were what do you call them? Not newsletters, not really fanzines, kind of a hybrid of a newsletter fanzine, where people would create a list, and they would mail this printed on 8.5 by 11 paper. They would mail it out to everyone, and then it would become the next person's turn, and it would have short stories, and one of the things was that it had little classified ads in the back of it, and there were people that were trading tapes through the mail, where they would record something off the air, or for someone in the US who had both a PAL and an NTSC VCR, they could actually take a tape that a friend had mailed them from England and copy it over to the US format, and those were highly desirable. And I did get a hold of a couple of Patrick Troughton episodes, and he was my grandmother's favorite, where I don't know that PBS was airing those very much. But listen, let's jump into why you started your new YouTube channel. And I skipped over a couple of questions here, so let me throw those out before we move on to that. You mentioned a little bit of quirkiness in Doctor Who fans, and I have met people who have told me that they only watch Doctor Who, that they don't watch anything else. They don't watch movies, and only Doctor Who. Are you one of those extremists?
No. I mean, that's partly why on our channel we didn't know what to call it, but we wanted a sense of proportion, because you know, you can only know something's good or bad by comparing it. You know, I mean, let's be honest. I mean, I know what fan is and fanatic, but I think to really love the program or whatever you're a fan of, you need to be able to compare it to other products. And actually part of that is you might love the program for classic 70s, you know, wobbly sets, bad special effects, you know, you will. But as long as you realize, compared to Star Wars or compared to the $6 Million Man, it is very different. But no, I like television, and so I've compared it to many things, and been nervous when ITV, the commercial station opposite BBC in England, would put Buck Rogers on. You know, remember in the 1970s, Buck Rogers in the 25th century, and you thought, oh my God, it's neck and neck with Doctor Who. I hope it doesn't defeat it in the TV ratings. The A-Team, I remember when the A-Team came out, ITV got it, and it was to challenge Doctor Who. And so your little show that has less of a budget, less action scenes, is up against some big American shows, bigger budget. So No, I think it's good to have perspective, and it's good to be able to compare, and it's good to know what's lovely about your show, even if it's not the best at budget or special effects or whatever it is.
Okay, very good. So aside from Doctor Who, is there any other television, film, music, any other form of arts and performing arts that you enjoy just as much or possibly even more?
Well, when it was on, and it was neck and neck. Blake Seven give it a hell of a run, and Blake
Okay.
Seven, you felt as though you were older because it was on later in the evening. So Blake Seven was seen as slightly more adult Doctor Who, so to speak, really. Of course, written by Terry Nation, the writer for the Daleks. So Blake Seven was one. Star Trek, I love the original series. I like the Next Generation, so I like a political thriller. I like politics, like I said earlier. So I love a political thriller. I remember I joined the film club at university, and the first movie we saw was called Defence of the Realm. Classic British political thriller. Lots of people die to keep secrets. The establishment, everything's hush hush. In the end, nothing happens. You find out a secret from the government, nothing happens. It's not like Watergate. Basically, it's all hushed up, and actually the story is that's it. Classic British establishment stitch up job. So I love a political thriller. I do like wider science fiction TV, especially. Um, I'm a glutton for a gimmick. I mean, is it Tweaky in Buck Rogers in the 25th Century? I love that character. Is it Tweaky? Twiggy? What Twig?
I don't recall. That's been a long time since I've seen that.
I remember that little character. He was like a little android, wasn't he?
Now, do you get into novels or comics by any chance?
Not in with sci-fi, believe it or not. I'm an English teacher, so of course the target books before video. We talk about technology before video, before there were any repeats in England, because I think in some ways Australia and America were luckier that you were having lots of repeats of 70s Doctor Who. We saw it once, never saw it again. Whereas I would buy the books, and so I would buy every Target book. I'd have to order them and wait 4 or 5 weeks. And of course, that was my video. I would read and reread the Doctor Who books and know the stories pretty well. So that was my introduction to Hartnell and Troughton, was all the old Target books. And the early Pertwee stories I know via the book first. And
Really?
so, yeah, oh yeah,
Wow.
it's fascinating. So, for example, Bill Strutton's story, Doctor Who and the Zarbi, the Red Planet, William Hartnell, which most Doctor Who fans say is very slow to watch. It's very laboured. The style's a bit strange. The book is brilliant. The Crusades, again, it's a William Hartnell one. There's only 2 of the 4 episodes exist, but the book is in its entirety and it's well written. David Whittaker, there's a lot of origins of Doctor Who, but David Whittaker was one of the key people, and he wrote the first book, Doctor Who and the Daleks. He has a backstory for all the companions that wasn't ever shown in the show. He actually goes into an awful lot. He's a man who looks as though he understood Doctor Who. And yeah, Gene Roddenberry's up there with Star Trek. He knew what he was doing. Nobody really did have that Gene Roddenberry status in Doctor Who. As you know, we kept changing producer and everything. But David Whittaker, if he'd stayed with Doctor Who, was probably as close as we would get. And he wrote some of the books.
Okay. Now, that's I can relate to that because when let's use Star Wars, for example,
Yeah.
not Star Wars Episode 4 or Star Wars A New Hope or any of that. It was when Star Wars came out, it was just called Star Wars. And the additional titles were added later. But there was a novel of that book, which I think I hope I don't get this name wrong. I think it was written by Alan Dean Foster as a ghostwriter, but it said George Lucas on the cover, but
Yeah.
technically it didn't actually say that George Lucas wrote it. But that novel of the film, for example, was something that occupied a lot of my time because I probably read that thing. I It may have been 100 times or something. I read it
Yeah.
until the
Yeah.
covers fell off of it, and it had it had more in it than the actual original film broadcast, and therefore it was superior. So to me, it was superior. It had scenes in it that were not on TV, which you could visualize in your mind.
Mm.
So it was like watching an extended version of the film. Now, with you mentioning um, becoming familiar with the Doctor Who eras of the second and third Doctors through the novels,
Yeah.
you touched on a little bit of a sensitivity there, which is the missing episodes. And I myself cannot read a novel of a story which is missing in film because it actually makes me sad that
Mm.
those
Mm.
those visuals, those tapes were destroyed. Such as
Yeah.
take Marco Polo, for
Yeah.
example. I
Yeah.
couldn't really bring myself to read a novel of Marco Polo because it would make me want to see it so much more. And as you know, we probably will never see it because I don't think that there's any copies of it in existence. So with you being familiar with some of the now missing episodes by uh, enjoying them in a novel format,
Yeah.
what is your take on the missing episodes? And that's kind of a broad, open-ended question there, which I won't ask you another one like this today. And we're going to move on to YouTube creation here next.
Yeah.
But I'm wondering what is your take on the missing episodes? Is there anything in particular about them that you are passionate about, perhaps?
Um, it's interesting because to answer one of those questions, the Tomb of the Cybermen, of course, was missing. And
Right.
I read the book first. And of course, I think it was in the top two or three. Every fan was saying, we must have Tomb of the Cyberman. We want to see the Tomb of the Cybermen. The book came out, I read the book, and then, of course, miracle happens. The episodes were found and released on video, and we all bought them. And I'm not knocking Tomb of the Cybermen's video version, but actually the book, in my imagination, was better. And this is the worry with missing episodes, that they've been missing for so long that our imagination has run riot. And if they are found now, and of course, no fan is going to deny if a missing episode is found, we all want to see it. But the fear would be very high now that expectations will not be delivered. And I think of Tomb of the Cybermen every time. It's still a good story, but it's not as good as the book. And talking about the books and reading the story before seeing anything, my first book, it won't surprise you, was The Sea Devils. Everybody in my family must have known I was mad on Sea Devils. And so that was one of the early books, The Sea Devils. It was, I think, one of the first 10 printed of any of the stories. And what was magic, you see, pre-video and everything, is they had illustrations in, about 8. And so I can vividly see the submarine attack by the Sea Devils, the Crusades. I can see one or two great illustrations as well as the English. So basically, even before I could really read every word, the pictures were pulling me in. Of all the stories that I'm missing, I think, oh gosh, I mean, and it's massive, but I'd still like to see the Dalek Master Plan and see it in its entirety. I know we've got a couple of episodes, but again, I am worried now because I've read it, I've thought about it, I've heard the audio version, and let's just say a miracle happens and they find all 12 episodes to show. It's not going to deliver, is it? And that's a shame. The love of some of these stories when we've lost them and we've read about them and researched them, sometimes actually reality will only hurt.
You know, that's a very interesting way of putting it. And there is positivity in looking at it that way. And what that reminds me of is Toby Hadoke, one
Yeah.
of the most treasured historians in the history of Doctor Who. What was that word that he used recently? Antisappointment. I think it might have been
Yeah.
antisappointment. So let's say all of the sudden BBC gets a phone call or an email from a broadcaster in Singapore or something that says, "Hey, we just found these dusty old tapes in our basement that
Mm.
say Doctor Who Marco Polo on
Oh,
them,
yeah.
and there's 8 tapes or something like that." Um, is it actually possible that these episodes were not as great as what people have come to believe over the years?
You see, there is a phrase, it's well known, curiosity kills the cat.
Right.
And 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 also familiarity breeds contempt. I'll just do loads of phrases now. Once you've got it on video or DVD and you watch it to death, you lose something, don't you? Let's be honest. It might
Yeah.
be your favorite show,
Yeah.
but you lose something.
Hmm.
And sometimes when I watch, say that, I mean, I'll just stick with the Sea Devils. If I watch the Sea Devils too much, I think I will erase the memories and the sensations I had originally. And so there's a fear that you can get too used to something till in the end it's just a diet of, episodes. On this whole area of missing episodes and everything, I mentioned Tomb of the Cybermen. What was the other one I was thinking about where I read it first? Oh, the Web of Fear.
Hmm.
Another great Patrick Troughton one with the Abominable Snowman, the Yeti. Now, I had read that one a lot, The Web of Fear, the London Underground. Oh, this sounded so claustrophobic. It was a good front cover, so your imagination fed into all that. Now, we found them, didn't we? Apart from one episode, we found the Web of Fear episodes, and we all bought them. It's not a bad story, but it does not deliver on your expectation level that had really started to go higher and higher. So Marco Polo, I would worry now. We all almost demand it, and if it was found, I think it is. If I was a psychologist, I'd say it is impossible to deliver now.
Okay. Now, one thing that I recently learned about missing episodes, I don't remember who it was that told me this. It may have been Ian Levine. I had an opportunity of speaking with Ian Levine a couple of months ago. Very interesting person that we
Yeah,
fans have to thank for saving some of those episodes from getting
yeah,
wiped. I think it was him that explained this to me. Let's say a private film collector had, let's just say, one episode of Marco Polo, not the
yeah,
whole thing, just
yeah.
one single 24-minute episode, whatever, in their collection. Um, I've never understood what would cause someone to keep something in a collection like that to themselves, knowing, or if they even knew, that there are a very large amount of people that would love to see that. And it seemed a little bit selfish to me, to the point of disbelieving that any film collector would do something like that. But there is this thing called money. And let's say you do have an episode of Doctor Who which is missing. Well, that that media has value because of the fact that it's unique. So if this film collector uh, suddenly gained a conscience and realized, wait a second, maybe I shouldn't be just hoarding this when other people would like to be able to see it, and let's say they returned it to BBC, even with the possibility of the tape technically being, oh, I don't know, stolen. Let's say they get past that, um, and that would destroy the value of the tape, or the I say tape,
Mm,
film,
mm,
the media, that would destroy the value of the media. because then BBC would clean it up through the restoration team, and then they would release it and sell it, and we would all buy it. So therefore, the original, such as the film The Lion, that original film that was offered on eBay, why would someone want to pay $10,000 for an old film which is decaying when they can get it that has been restored by the BBC? So that would destroy the value. So what I'm wondering is, in a nutshell, do you think that there will be any more of these missing episodes found? I think what is it, 97 now?
Yeah, it's in the 90s, isn't it?
Yeah. Do you think that we haven't any hope to hold out for, that any of these will make their way back where we can see them?
I think most of them are lost because I think the world is smaller now than it was, and I think there've been searches across the world regarding private collections. Though we all have rumors that there's a few out there in private private hands. I have. You were saying a few interesting things there, like Douglas Adams with the story "The City of Death," one of the top stories of the Tom Baker era, had the plot device of 7 Mona Lisas made. There were, one original and 6 frauds. And the whole idea of that story is art dealers, art collectors, Doctor Who collectors, they know what they've got and their price of it. And I think in some cases, what they prize more than the money value is actually that they own it. And of course, there's a bit of a, like in the art world, there's an element of bluff because, of course, you can't declare that you've got a nicked version of a Mona Lisa. But I think the private collectors get more of a kick out of knowing they own something that nobody else can access than they are bothered about the monetary value. And on the monetary value thing, the BBC, as you know, are in a dispute at the moment with the Anthony Coburn estate over the very first Doctor Who story, An Unearthly Child. And obviously, if they thought we could make a lot more money from selling it, from putting it on the BBC iPlayer, blah, 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 maybe Disney streamed one day, they would pay the price. So the BBC obviously has a price it will stop at. And so therefore, my concern is the BBC won't just pay any money to get some of these priceless possible missing episodes back. They will have a limit, even though, yeah, merchandise, everything is all there to factor in. And so I think compared to the private collector who might have a Doctor Who episode that he knows everybody wants, and yeah, but I don't think the value they will put on it is the value that will be given by the BBC. So I think and I fear that means they will stay in private hands as some glory trophy, a bit like people who used to go to Africa and get elephant tusks and stuff, that they will just have them in private collections. Because the other thing about fandom is there's everybody loves a class system in the fan world. I know somebody. I knew somebody who did this. I'm just a normal fan who didn't know anybody, didn't have a network, didn't have connections. I'm just a normal fan who likes the show. We all know the fans who seem to say they know more, helped John Nathan Turner out, the producer, or did this or did that, and they feel more special. Now, can you imagine if you had a missing episode in your collection, they will feel extremely special. They're not going to give that away. I think fandom is a bit strange like that, you know?
Okay. That's a very interesting way of putting it. And I have a little bit of a theory, which is not positive. As I mentioned to you about the tape trading networks, there were some episodes that are currently lost to this day that were being traded amongst fans as late as the early 1980s. And I think that unfortunately, there were not enough people that retained those or ever realized that they would be interesting to other people in the future. And then when Doctor Who ended in 1989, there was this period where people kind of forgot about it. And if you take a look at the return of Doctor Who in 2005, which I believe began filming in 2004, YouTube, I don't know if YouTube was actually existing yet in 2005. It was somewhere in the early to mid aughts when YouTube started. And if you take a look at YouTube, for example, um, who hasn't seen when somebody uploaded someone else's content? You know, in the early days, people were taking copyrighted music and putting a whole bunch of pictures in it and creating new videos, which were some of which were absolutely incredible. But then there's that thing called copyright, and it seems as if there's a generation or more than one generation of people who either did not understand or just simply don't care about copyright because I think any of us have seen where somebody has uploaded a video to YouTube and it clearly says down at the bottom, I don't own this content and don't delete it or whatever. I mean, no, it's still copyrighted. Okay. Now, with that mindset of people being willing to upload things which they do not own, it seems to me that if at any point during the existence of YouTube, from when it started to now, that if somebody found a dusty old videotape that might have been their dad's or whatever in their attic that was a missing episode of Doctor Who, that somebody would have uploaded it um just not just for fame, but just to upload content to get hits to their channel. And as far as I know, I don't think that's ever happened. I don't think anybody has ever uploaded a missing episode of Doctor Who to YouTube, and YouTube is the second largest social media platform on the face of the planet right now. So do you think that because of that fact that there just simply aren't any out there in the hands of fans or otherwise, not film collectors,
Yeah.
anyone other than film collectors?
Because I think I've got the same fatalistic view as you, because I think, when, I don't know, you're moving house or you're clearing out, or relatives who don't understand the importance of the show, video cassettes will look old and dated and something to be put in the bin without even looking at them. I remember when I emigrated to Australia, I had a lot of things on videotape and I label well, but I binned a lot of stuff. I just imagine people cleaning out people's attics and lofts and not being a Doctor Who fan and also not being bothered when somebody's died or something, to be going through every video all 3 hours and checking. I think it's possible that one or two things have slipped through the net. But I also think your logical conclusion is there's not much out there now. That's it. I think we've almost got what we've got.
Yeah, yeah, I can relate to that. When I was telling you about the cosplay fundraisers in between the public broadcasting
Yeah.
airings of Doctor Who, I actually recorded a whole bunch of those. I would actually just set the VCR to record for like 8 hours, and I would go to work, come back, and so it would record the Doctor Who episodes off air. Plus, it
Yeah.
would record all of those cosplay fundraisers in between. And, there was a point which there was a day that I will always regret until the day that I die, where
Yeah.
I had a box of videotapes in my closet, which this would have been probably the mid to late 90s. There was all of that Doctor Who that I had recorded off of television, including all of those fundraisers with all of the cosplay, and I threw them in what you guys call the bin. I threw them in the trash can, and because I didn't think the Doctor Who was ever going to come back, and I hadn't watched it in so many years that those boxes of tapes were just taking up space in my
Yeah.
closet that I needed
Yeah.
for something else. And I actually still remember when the trash truck came and emptied that bin full of tapes. And to this very day, I don't think that there are copies of all of the cosplay fundraisers that even exist anymore. And so it's highly likely that if anyone had missing episodes that were done through tape trading networks that they have been disposed of. So, um, anyway, all right. So we've covered the missing episodes. Let's talk about the whole reason I asked you if I could do an interview with you. Are you hanging in there? Okay. I
I'm fine. I'm fine. Thank
okay.
you very much.
Okay, good. Your new YouTube channel. You know, this interview series is about people that have shared traits in arts and performing arts. And I believe that creating a YouTube channel and creating content, especially with yourself, your face, your likeness, your voice in it, and what have you, is an area of performing arts. And I think it's very interesting to see someone who has started a new channel these days, and yours is called the Sense Sphere. A little
Hard to
hard for
say.
me to take. The
I know
Sense,
it's hard for me.
the Sense Sphere, and I believe it started about a month ago. And I'm wondering, have you been on other YouTube channels
Yeah.
which inspired you to create your own channel? Which you
Yes.
just said, yeah. And
Yep.
or why did you decide to make a brand new channel?
I suppose in the back of my head, I knew retirement was coming, and I've been in a job where I am just showing other people's creativity. And I suppose there's a point in life you want to do a bit of your own. The initial idea was I would retire and write a novel or a script or a play from my backpacker diaries, my teacher diaries. That was the initial plan. But as I was getting closer to retirement, obviously I befriended somebody who was on Type 40, Spacebook. That's a really popular YouTube channel. I think, yeah, Type 40, if you type that in, you'd find it, or Spacebook, because they used to be on Facebook, Facebook, you know. So Type 40, I discovered them in lockdown, as I think we all discovered a lot of things in lockdown. You know, TV
Right,
wasn't as
right.
good. Yeah, there wasn't much on. And as you flick through YouTube, I must be really mad because I did not realize that on YouTube you could find all these live streamed programs. Yes, maybe made by fans. And so every Thursday for 2 or 3 hours, I'd enjoy watching Type 40. It was like a magazine show that have humor, nostalgic items, rumor, and it was great. And I thought, wow, oh, I wish I'd joined them at the beginning when it all started. You know, that's how I felt. And you were pleased if you sent a little text in and it was shared on the screen. Um, so yeah, watch them. One of the people on it, um, I got texting, and he said he wanted to start his own channel. And I said, well, I'd really be interested in that. It's always good to be in the origins of something, isn't it? I think it's always so.
Right.
So he was the one who organised the April Blackpool convention called Invasion, and me and my partner offered just to do voluntary work that day, look after the actors. Since it's the first ever convention, you know, it's all hands on board. Mistakes will be made. But we said, you can have us for free. We'll schmarm around the actors and make sure they're looked after. And so as that was happening, he told me he was starting his new channel. So I went on that from program one. And as that developed, I could see editorially, nothing against it, but editorially, he was going in a slightly different direction. And you know, this is like in every job you have, isn't it? If you either are happy how the company's going, or you think, oh, I'd like to take it a bit more that way. I shared ideas, a couple of ideas, but I think the person wanted to run their channel their way, and that's fine. Um, and so I just started when you are creative and you're thinking, oh, I'd just like a bit more input. That's all, just a bit more input. And so it just evolved really. And as we got into the autumn, and knowing the series was coming back, I mean, you know, you'd be mad if you're going to start a channel. Don't wait till the series is finished. I mean, you know, you might as well ride the crest of the wave. And
Right.
anybody who see my channel, and I thank you for ever watching it. But the first one we did was the giggle, and of course that's not the first one of the specials. So you can see we weren't quite ready, and it's mad, isn't it? Because you know this fine well. You have to, well, it's me. You create the thumbnails, the adverts, you create the content, you create the videos, you find the music, it's paid for. I've learned so much in a matter of what, 7 weeks. The show's been on YouTube for 5 weeks. we've done our 16th show. I'm taking a tiny break now to kind of recalibrate and work out what we're doing, where we're going. And yeah, it's stunning. But yeah, it was an evolution. You know, you watched a channel, then you joined a channel, then you want more input, and in the end, you think, well, I'll do it myself.
Right. Okay. Okay. Makes sense. That's interesting that you should mention lockdown, because that is actually when I started watching YouTube. You know,
Yeah,
YouTube had been around for so long, and in fact, I think I used to watch it a lot when it was new. I actually remember when YouTube came out. I don't know if I looked at it the first day or whatever, but it was definitely within the first month.
yeah,
Because a friend of mine had emailed me and said, "Hey, take a look at this. They're actually putting videos on here now." And that was back when there were dial-up modems. So you would have a video where somebody was talking, and all of a sudden it would go, what, 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 and you would have to sit there and wait for it to
yeah,
continue. Look, you couldn't watch it. It didn't stream. Okay, that
yeah,
there wasn't enough bandwidth to stream. But I quit. I kind of forgot about YouTube, and then during lockdown, with an abundance of spare time, I started watching YouTube, and it wasn't Doctor Who, but then all of a sudden I typed in Doctor Who onto YouTube. I'm like, oh, what is this? Wait a second, fans made their own film? Seriously? I need to watch this. And then I started seeing podcasts, which technically they're vidcasts because
yeah,
they're in video. You know, pretty much the same thing, modern version of a podcast, and started seeing the fandom and the friends that could be made. And I
yeah,
remember starting to watch Type 40. With
yeah,
Dan Hadley
yeah,
and his friends on there, and I still remember commenting on something in the chat, and then all of a sudden it said the time scales down at the bottom, and then what I
yeah,
said, and I'm like, oh, the what? This is cool. This is
yeah,
interactive right here. So it's interesting to see where we've come from then to now. And I think I saw you on Type 40. I'm pretty sure. Um, because when your channel started, I was already familiar with who you were, and that could be why the YouTube algorithm suggested that I watch your new show. And I've enjoyed it. You're doing an excellent job, and I've seen it develop. I love the panel format where you will have multiple views from certain people. Um, and one thing that I'm still trying to put my finger on is, how does your show, The Sense Sphere, how does it differ from other uh let's say, let's make a really tight class here. Doctor Who fandom panel discussions, if that's even a thing. How does it differ from other channels which would have similar format, such as Type 40, for example?
yeah. Type 40 is the role model to me. So I will never, I've got no critique of Type 40. They give me loads of ideas. Love Type 40, and I still watch it now. But it gave me ideas. And becoming from a teaching background, I found that Type 40, you could be on for 3 or so hours sometimes. Other panel shows with 5 or 6 or sometimes 10 panelists, they can go on for 2+ hours. And so the origins of this for SenseSphere, but there were two, but one of them was structure. Now I know that Type 40, and I love Dan Hadley, and he does structure as in he's the toilet break. He is the historical item that Simon Horton normally does when they go through the archives. There's a kind of structure there, but I wanted a kind of more academic structure where we do try and ask questions, like an essay title, and then we break it down into supplementaries. That was the origin of it. And I said, I'd still like the tone to be friendly and informal, like a pub chat of Doctor Who fans. I would like to have a broad spectrum where we do include all eras of Doctor Who. We do not cancel. We don't say there's an area not to talk about. I was aware that one or two channels, it's an echo chamber and it's all about this, that, or the other. I'm not saying Dan Hadley's is like that, but Dan Hadley's has a lovely meandering quality where they will go from right onto another and they talk. And but as a teacher, I know that you have 1 hour limits or 2 hour limits, and so I just wanted it a little bit more sharp on the structure. And maybe instead of saying, let's do the Daleks today, you may have noticed my recent one wasn't just, here's the Daleks, we're going to talk about the Daleks and every story they've been in. I think I don't want to think I'm indulging myself, and I don't want to think that I'm taking the viewers for granted, which is you've got 3 hours to give me. I'm a new channel, and I'm not as good as Dan Hadley and Facebook or Type 40, so I need to be a bit more kind of sharp. So basically, if you want to come and watch my program on the Daleks, there is a question we try and answer. We try. So we started with that, and you'll have noticed that the programs have evolved because we had a lot of those questions at the beginning and then broken down into supplementaries. That's gone a little bit just on time because obviously each one's a little video insert. So I don't want to bin that, but I need to find a bit of time to kind of get on top of that again. But most of our shows starts with a question, and we try and answer that question. And I normally have supplementaries now in my captions ready to lead the panelists a bit further. So it was that. Let's have a pub chat atmosphere. Let's be inclusive of all eras of Doctor Who, no cancellation. Let's be able to debate robustly, but not fall out of friendship. And a heavier structure. That was my initial thoughts about. And the Sense4You idea, which is a 1960s, it was in the Sensorites with William Hartnell. And we were going to call ourselves the Zero Room, but other people have called themselves that. I didn't want to get too awkward with Panopticon and Matrix and stuff. We said, well, look, shit, we want a sense of humor. I think it's about time fandom had a sense of proportion sometimes, and we don't hit on each other and tell each other off all the time and cancel each other, that we can all debate, but we're all fandom. Surely what unites us is more than what divides us. That was the point. So we said Sense4You makes a lot of sense. Sense of proportion, sense of humor, sense of awareness. That was the plan.
Okay, very good. Now, the next question that I was going to ask you is on the technical side, where basically is it hard to do? But I want to throw in one more question now before asking you that, because of something that you just touched on, cancellation. And before we joined on the Zoom this morning, I was on Twitter and I saw your last tweet, which is now probably well over an hour ago, and I'm sorry to be keeping you so long. We're almost done here. Hang in there.
I'm loving it. Thank you.
I'm very much enjoying this as well. You had posted a tweet where I went and clicked on comment, and I was going to say something, and it said you can't comment unless you're part of this group. And that's when I went and rediscovered Communities, Twitter, or now known as X. It has a feature called Communities, which I completely forgot about. I should have remembered it because I actually started a community called the Timescales and then forgot. And I hope nobody joined it expecting something, because I forgot that it existed until today. But what I did is I went and tried to respond to that. You posted 2 tweets, one of them in general public, and then the other one in I think it's just called Doctor Who Community. So I went and clicked on About of Doctor Who Community, and I noticed something which is concerning to me, that it has 3 people that are called mods. And if you look back at, let's go back to 2005 when Doctor Who came back, which nobody ever expected it to happen. Back then there were what were known as forums, which are privately operated, basically bulletin board systems, where that's an old term from pre-internet, a BBS, where you will have a individual or a group of people that surround this individual, which owns and controls the communications who are moderators. And from what I have seen, moderators tend to have difficulty remaining neutral, and they will try to control conversations based on their own personal interests or desires, which can lead to a toxic environment. And what I'm wondering is, have you been involved in, or are you still involved in, privately operated forums who have moderation, where a small group of people control the voices of the whole?
Yeah, and I think Dan Hadley has one, doesn't he? He has a really popular fan page, and he has people who moderate that. Um, I've started my own, the Sense3 fan community page. We've got about 70 members so far. So I'm moderating it myself, I suppose. I haven't actually moderated anything. The conversations have all been, fine. But I know what you mean regarding when there's this other entity that actually, do they watch all the thread? Do they watch the whole conversation? Because what I've found, I'm sure you found as well, is when anybody responds to your videos or wants to interact with you, in most cases, fandom is warm and supportive and very friendly. Where you often also get the person who I always think doesn't quite get the context, takes something out of place. And I've had a couple already where you're thinking, that I never said anything like that. And they've made a judgment and they have dismissed my judgment and they've told me my judgment is completely wrong. And they'll never watch my channel again, or they'll take away their subscription permanently. And you get this kind of whoa. And I'm thinking, but we're making a show for free. You make your shows for free. Well, what are we doing? This is, I say to my panelists, thank you for your 2 hours of an hour of time, because it's goodwill. That's all we're working on here. Fandom, we're making shows on goodwill. That's it. And to then get moderators, or in my case, 1 or 2 people responding, there is 1 or 2 people, but they seem to have quite a lot of energy. And they say, I don't like what you said, or I don't like what one of your panelists said, and therefore I'm going to do a version of cancel or hurt you by taking away a subscription or always criticizing you to other people. And you think, wow, dear me, did you read the whole thread? Did you watch the whole program? And this is the thing with, going back to your question about moderators, do they follow the whole thread, or are they looking for keywords or trigger words? This is the concern.
Yeah, it is a concern, and it would present an argument for a more open, non-moderated forum, such as Twitter or X. And I've had something similar happen. There was in running the timescales, the timescales was going to close, and my brother and I had been talking about creating a new website, because we used to create websites in the late 90s and the early aughts. And we needed to learn more about how there are new apps and tools that will create basic pages and content for you without you having to sit down and type in raw HTML, which is where we started. So we were talking about starting a new website with no ideas. We thought maybe something about movies. Maybe we'll criticize some movies. And I noticed that the timescales was going to close because the original person that started it encountered new interests in life. And he was going to go away. And I thought, that would be terrible for all of this content to be lost, because I myself have found some Big Finish stories in particular that I absolutely loved, that I would have never known about if I hadn't read a review on there. So we managed to purchase the website from the founder. And at some point, someone took what appeared to be a review. It wasn't an actual review that was ever on the site, as far as I know.
Yeah.
There were some problems with the structure of the website, where at some point somebody could actually copy code from a page or something and recreate a fake page that makes it look like it's on there or something, which that got fixed. But somebody had taken basically a really terrible, somewhat disgusting thing, making it look as if someone had written a review like that, and then they went and posted it and tried to attribute it to me. And I'm like, what? No, first of all, I would never say something like that. And secondly, no, that's not the type of content that we would even want on here. So I had to hit the train head on and realize, I'm against moderation, but there is a point when something does have to be moderated. Do you think that for the health of fandom that moderators are actually needed in order to keep content streamlined and on target, or is it better just bareback?
I mean, me and a few of the panelists, we're all former teachers, so we'd like debate. I used to love debate. And of course, sometimes people will make a mistake, misspeak. That's the whole point of debate, isn't it?
Mhm.
So my instinct, I think everybody's is open debate. However, the 5 weeks on my platform, and I know you will probably concur with this, you do worry because you're responsible for that channel. You're responsible for the messaging from that channel. Everything that's linked to your channel, whether it's on Facebook, whether it's on a website, whether it's on Twitter, whether it's on the program, you're responsible for. And so, you know, you suddenly feel as though, hold on a minute. I mean, at the moment, I feel swamped that with all these different forums going on, I feel as though I can't monitor every single one as much as you would desire. So I suppose in the back of my head, I'm saying I would prefer free speech. And I really do think it's important for fandom to actually start talking to each other again. So, for example, I've had on my last 3 shows a lad, his nickname Cinnamon Crunch. And he's a Gen Zer, he's a Gen Zer, and we're all looking for them on panels. You look for somebody who's younger, who's happy to talk and explain whether they see a certain era of Doctor Who in a different way to us, who always sound like dinosaurs now, and we should be cancelled. And we want to be able to talk. And actually, that's one idea I've got for a program, which we're going to do, me and Cinnamon. We are going to actually have old Doctor Who fans, me representing them, so to speak, and he will represent the younger generation, and we will hit one topic at a time, and we are really going to try and discuss, argue, but still be friends. And surely we almost need to educate people on how to actually, let's enjoy our program, but let's not fall out over it. And if I don't like the Jodie Whittaker era, that does not mean I want to be cancelled or I should be cancelled. It just means I'd like us to have a chat about why you really love that era, and I'll tell you what problems I have with it, and we'll talk about it. Now, as a teacher, as an English teacher especially, surely everything can be resolved by talking and communicating. But I also know we both run a channel now. You are responsible for that channel, and so you want some level of oversight just in case.
Okay, that's a very, very good way of putting it. And if you're going to do a panel like that, I'm game. I would be on it, and I can be one of the old school Doctor Who fans. Okay, so Brendan, this is absolutely awesome to meet you, because now it's going to enhance my enjoyment even more of watching your channel and running into you and the people on your panel online. And you're doing an absolutely excellent job. I don't recall watching a new Doctor Who YouTube channel just start up, because I always found out about them later when they had already been going. But with yours, I think that I accidentally caught the very first episode, and I think it was something that the YouTube algorithm suggested to me, because it had learned from my viewing habits. And I can't be alone in wondering let's say that there's a fan out there watching this right now or listening to it later on Rewind, or watching it once we put it on YouTube. Let's say that there's a fan out there who has this idea that they want to start their own channel. Not necessarily Doctor Who, but we can focus on Doctor Who because that's a interest that we both have, obviously. But let's say someone out there wants to start their own channel and they have no idea where to start. You know, myself, I'm using Zoom simply because it's easy. Zoom it's a proven format which became extremely popular during lockdown in particular because a lot of people had to use it just for work. But I believe you're using StreamYard, which I'm familiar with, and
actually, it's Restream.
oh, you're using, okay, you're not using StreamYard, you're using something even different.
Yeah.
So, okay. So what I'm wondering is, how hard is it? Does it take weeks of planning, software installation, testing, got to test your mic, got to test your camera, and then that thing called editing, which I loathe because editing takes so much time. I am extremely happy when I don't have to edit something. All of these things combined, um, what is the best advice that you can give someone who wants to do the exact same or very similar thing to what you have just started doing? Any best advice that you could give them?
I think starting from, like, when I started planning a lesson, I always had to be aware of your target audience and what you wanted out of the lesson. And I've tried to apply that here because, okay, love of Doctor Who or love of whatever your topic is doesn't take you anywhere. So I had to think, why do I want to do it? Why do I want to do it other than just join other panels or send in a few texts now and again? So of course you have to have that hunger that there is something different I want to try and do, because that's the only thing that's going to drive you through, because you can be very, very knocked by looking at views. You can be very knocked by seeing other more established channels in your field that are doing amazingly well. But they may be established in years and years and years or have great connections. You're just this little person who has an idea and you think it's an idea that's worth investing in. And it is investing, it's investing money, it's investing time. And you'll need a lot of time. I don't know how anyone does this with a full-time job or anything, but you need to think, right, am I sure that this is worth doing? Because you're going to maybe produce and nobody finds you. I've been extremely lucky. I wish I'd written down what I expected in the first month, but what's happened is certainly not what I expected. It's much better. But in those early days, you can be pushed from pillar to post. I'm an English teacher, as I keep saying. Therefore, I'm okay with Word. I'm okay with talking, but I'm not good with technology. So to try and think, right, is it Restream, StreamYard? Is it Zoom? Where do I start? From that decision, you then go on to start thinking, well, what do I present? What does it look like? Oh, no, I'm not very good on Photoshop. Oh, no, I'm not very good with art. Well, am I going to get anyone else to do it? The answer is no. So I had to learn all these different software, products and work out which one was cheap enough, but good enough for me to use and rely on. So I've used a various few. I've got video editing software that I used to use for a couple of home videos decades ago, and I've now updated. And I thought, well, if I learn for this channel, I'll be able to make better home videos as well. So that was kind of that thinking there. Then learning about YouTube policy, which I still don't think I'm on top of, and learning how to establish yourself on YouTube. That seemed like a mammoth task to go, well, how will anybody know I'm here? Yes, I know what advertising is. You can say and tell your friends on Facebook, but most of my friends aren't Doctor Who fans, so that wouldn't get me far. I am a normal fan. I don't have connections. So how do you reach out to an audience? So that was very scary, because unless you're happy, and let's say if you're doing it for the love of it, you're just making the program really for yourself. I'm a bit more ambitious than that. So basically, I wanted outreach. So yes, I was aware that I had to do early days, learn how to do the art and the design, how you fit it. Oh my God, learning in those early days about the Photoshop versions and all the different formats. So I'll design a logo, as everyone will see, it's very simple, um, and um, a slogan and a vibe for the channel and an image for the channel. But then is it what's the size for desktop? What's the size for the Twitter format? What's the size for the Facebook format? What's the size for the iPhone? And you realize that actually you've got to keep redesigning. And so that was an early one, going, gosh, to actually be noticed, I've got to keep redesigning. And that took a long time. And that really pushed me back because I didn't want to start without a brand identity. And so, yes, the artwork, learning graphics, learning all that was a major thing. And then how do you get them onto YouTube? How, at my first show, if you saw my first show, like you said, we did make an earlier show and I split it into three in the end. You'll have seen it. It was two. Mm-hmm. You'll see two thumbnails with questions, and there's the Time Teaks Roadshow, which has got about 100 views because it wasn't meant to be on its own. And I only learned last minute that I had a panel, I had the show ready, we were ready to go, and then I'd put all my stuff on YouTube, but it said you need 24 hours notice for verification. And then I thought, oh my gosh, I've got everybody ready. So I had to record it and it went to nobody. So that was one of those starts when you think, oh God, because it just said you 24 hours, you can't do it. Luckily, I saved it so I could split it into pieces. So the first ever live show was the Giggle review after YouTube allowed me and verified me. So there's all those rules and regulations that I'm still not on top of. I feel happier now making a quick thumbnail. I feel finding an audience, it's basically talking to people. You know, you go on Twitter, you see somebody's got a Doctor Who icon behind them, you say hello to them, or you respond to one of their posts, and then suddenly you might find they go, you know, I like talking to you, and they might like you. My gosh, I haven't slept much. I'm not working. I'm befriending a lot of people for the right reasons, actually. I'm not just doing it to say, please, you know, follow me and all that nonsense. No, it's been amazing. I have to say, in 5 weeks, the amount of people I've got to know, including yourself, we've chatted quite a while trying to organize this, haven't we? And so you've been talking to me for ages. You were one of the first people who actually joined in the thread. My anticipation was that I would be making a live show and making loads of mistakes, but the thread could be ignored.
Right.
And then suddenly people were talking to me on the thread. And the only reason I think I've survived is because when it was lockdown, obviously I was a teacher and we did teach remotely. And so on our Teams software, I had one screen there of the kids' work, one screen of the kids. On my iPhone was their attendance and any questions and hands up job. I was dealing with about 4 different things at once and trying to talk like a radio show. And obviously that was taxing, but I loved it in the end. And actually, yes, you can't beat being in a classroom with kids, of course not. But I loved that format. And so when this idea came up, although it's getting used to the software and everything, it feels like you're doing remote teaching.
Okay. That's, you know, that just gave me a throwback to the very first video that I did for the Timescales channel. The original founder of the Timescales had an idea of interviewing authors, and he never did it. And we talked about doing that together, perhaps, which maybe one of the ideas that made me realize that, you know, I think I want to make a YouTube channel. You know, maybe it's time. Why don't I figure out how to do it? It's been years. I uploaded videos to YouTube a long time ago, completely forgot about them, and then found them and went, wow, I can't believe these are still here. But there was an author, Will Hadcroft, who was having his very first BBC audio Doctor Who story that was going to be released. And I was thinking, wow, I wonder how that feels. You know, and in his case, he had been working on it for a long time. It had been something he had been working towards for quite some time. And I remember reaching out to him, and I guess I must have told him that, you know, I think I'm going to start a new channel. Can I do an interview with you? And then I heard back, and I still remember that day. First of all, I was in disbelief. I thought, okay, well, how in the world am I supposed to interview a Doctor Who author? But it looks like I've gotten myself into this now, because I asked him and he said, yeah. And I remember when he appeared on my Zoom screen, and I was petrified. And I'm like, God, I hope I don't screw this up, because I don't know what I'm doing here. And over time, it's become more easy. But what I'm wondering is, when you first started and went live, I guess the obvious question here would be, were you nervous?
Yes, and if anybody just wants a bit of a laugh, go and watch just the first seconds of any show. I call them cock-ups. I keep making loads of cock-ups. I press the tunnel sequence in the run order. The run, yes, and I think I agree with you. I think you can tell already that I'm a bit more relaxed, because in those days I was very serious, almost felt anyway, and it was just kind of press the right buttons in the right order. So no, it's a very weird feeling. Why am I nervous when I've been teaching in front of kids? I used to do assemblies in front of 300 children who are very, as you know, cynical. You know, what's this assembly about? They want to just sleep. I've talked to crowds of up to 1,000 people. So why am I nervous? I'm nervous because it's recorded, and somebody can just play it back for good or bad and hold it against you, or just treasure it. And unlike lessons, I know lessons may have been recorded in the past naughtily, but basically your lessons are your lessons, and they're lost into time, aren't they? But these are there for good, and so that adds a fear factor, I think.
That's a good way of putting it, because you're not supposed to, but it's relatively easy to download a YouTube video. So once it's online, it's online. And you know, I've looked back. I don't typically watch the interviews that I do afterwards, because I'm kind of a little self-conscious, and I don't like seeing myself on the screen. But I've seen them change over time. One of them in particular is personally embarrassing to me, because I was talking really slowly, and the reason being was that on a previous video, someone had criticized it in the comments and said something like, why is this guy talking so fast? I can't understand what he's saying. So I probably shouldn't have taken it that seriously, and I thought, okay, well, I need to be talking slower. So the next interview I did with someone, I spoke much slower, and now in me looking at that, it feels awkward, and I can't redo it. You know, I'm not going to ask the author, hey, can we re-record this because I was talking weird or something? You know, you can't do that, because they've already spent their time. And I'm wondering, do you watch your own videos to critique yourself after you've done them?
No, and it's not through arrogance. I agree with you. I can't watch myself back, but I have to say, as I'm doing something, I think it's because as a teacher, you have to be aware when the lesson's going badly, how you will retrieve the situation. You're looking at the kid's eyes. That's one advantage that we've got over YouTube. But I'm very, very self-critical, and I am very well aware when a mistake is happening, and I'm very well aware when the debate has gone slightly off piste. So yeah, I won't pick up every blemish, and I won't pick up everything, but I think from what you were saying, you think the show has changed only in 5 weeks, quite a short time span. And I would agree with you, for better or for worse, it has changed, because each program, when I finished, I thought that was rubbish, that needed changing. I say it's rubbish because I'm thinking that's not where I wanted to be. Hopefully, it's entertaining nonetheless. But I'm a sharp critic of myself. or let's be honest, as a teacher, you get told by the kids anyway. They're not shy. So you are aware what works and what doesn't work. On my other screen, for every YouTube show, I have a lesson plan. I have questions. I have where I want to take it. I have it all timed and structured to a degree. And I think I'll never let go of that, because I think that teacher element, and one of the reasons I said I started was there's other shows out there and there's some very good shows out there, but I wanted to bring a bit of a tightness because I didn't want to assume that Doctor Who fans would just watch all night my channel. But it's interesting when you were talking about how you feel if you did look back and all the rest of it. One thing that got me extremely nervous, and I think you've got to get used to this if you're going to start a YouTube channel, is there are other competitors out there, even friendly rivals. And you've got to get over the fact that you can't pick a time. I mean, why would you do a live YouTube stream at 2 a.m. when nobody's watching? I know people, if they've heard about you, will find you. But most people try and pick when everybody's at home and try and capture an audience. But if you know that you're up against one or two other very, very good channels, it adds a bit more pressure, I think. It adds a bit more kind of adrenaline. And you don't want to make too many mistakes. You may have noticed that one or two of my shows, I've learned that you want to retain viewers, don't you? I mean, a view's one thing, but it's the retention. I don't understand much about the analytics yet, but one thing you may have noticed from the Sea Devil show, the Dalek show, is I try and get the puppets in. I try and add a little panopticon polemic. I try and do it. I also, to give myself a break. And so I've tried to do a few recorded items. The snag is, as you totally understand, time. When do you make all this stuff? It's easier just to talk now because I haven't had to make it. But by God, as soon as you make a 2.5-minute sketch with 2 puppets, that I was up all night the other day just coming up with the 2 minutes. It's mad. It's absolutely mad.
Okay. You know, we're going to wrap up here because I have taken way more of your time than I asked for, and
I've really enjoyed it.
Me too, Brendan. I'm very grateful to you, but I only have 2 more questions. One of them is definitely the puppets, and then I'm wondering, where do you want to see your channel, let's say a year from now? You can pick either question or both.
Well, since I've just mentioned the puppets that I only purchased about, there they are. Now the younger one is Walkie, which is terrible, isn't it? The woke world. And I thought, well, I'll have a stereotype of a youngster. There he is. And in my sketches, he represents, well, and I'm trying not to be dismissive, but he's the Gen Z Doctor Who fan.
Okay.
And he'll always see the good in what Russell Davies is doing. He'll always see the good in what the BBC are doing. And today, for example, in the show on controversies in Doctor Who, he thought there was no problem at all with, he doesn't see why there should be any deaths in Doctor Who. It should be a safe space. So he's like that.
And his name is that's Wokey?
He's Wokey, and his granddad's...
That's funny.
So he's called Wokey, and that's Willie, his granddad. And so he's a classic Doctor Who fan who thinks we can have as much death as possible, you know, blah, blah, blah. And they have a bit of banter between the 2 of them. And yeah, it rings a bell, doesn't it? Willie and Wokey. At the moment, yeah, Wokey loses every argument at the moment because he's the kid. But I think I'll develop it just so I don't lose all the Gen Zers that actually sometimes the granddad is wrong. The granddad's a bit naughty. Sometimes he mentions what he gets up to with his wife, you know, little subtle things that, you know, Wokey's like, what? So because he thinks he's the real man who's lived his life. And Wokey, you haven't lived yet. You don't understand. You're too busy on Twitter. So there's this kind of development. And this was all because one person wrote to me after one of the shows, and I did ask for feedback. You know, it's early days. I think it's important to listen to people's views. And he just said, well, have you ever thought of having a puppet? And I said, well, no, I haven't actually. I've planned it.
Just slipped my mind there. No, I haven't thought of a puppet.
Well, I'm planning this channel, pressing all the buttons with my 2 hands. They're the only ones available, to have a hand puppet. When? How? So, of course, the answer straight away is, well, you'll have to record it. And then you think, oh, for God's sake. But anyway, I thought I'll go in and I'll try it. And actually, everybody is writing to me saying, can we have more of the puppets? So
Now,
they're going to become.
Go ahead.
No, they're going to become the monster. You know, there's certain things you don't plan, and they're going to take over the show, I think, in the end.
Yeah. Had you been a puppeteer previously? And who is, can you tell me who's doing the voices?
Right. So the granddad is me.
Okay.
And my partner is Wokey, Jamie.
Okay. Okay.
So isn't it sad that you're in a relationship where you're planning a puppet sketch? I mean, and I made a joke today that, you know, my partner's under the table trying to be a hand puppet. This is really not what we should be doing. But, you know, it reminds me of Police Academy at this rate. But,
okay. That's that I actually I had seen the puppets before, but I didn't know their names. I didn't know they actually had names. That is just great. So Brendan, where do you see your show being? Let's say a year from now. Where do you want it to be? Where do you expect it to be?
Do you know what? I made a mistake. Did you do this when you purchased your channel? I didn't write down what my targets were because I assumed that this was going to be a long haul, and I assumed I'd be lucky to get more than 30 views.
I actually did not, because the very first show was to find out what it felt like to actually become an accomplished Doctor Who author. And then as I started interviewing other authors, I started to notice, wait a second, there are some shared traits here that both of these people have mentioned, like loving what you do. So I didn't really write down any goals, but what I thought was that after I did a couple of interviews, particularly high profile actors, that the channel views would skyrocket, and then I'd be all happy a year later there's 10,000 subscribers. No, it's the growth takes a long time. I think as of present, I have somewhere around 200 subscribers after a tremendous amount of time. So in my experience, the growth is not anywhere near as fast or large as what I would have hoped for, but then I didn't know what to expect. So it's hard to set a goal based on something where you have no experience.
Isn't it hard, me and you, on this one? Yeah, you can set targets and you can do this and you can do that, but then you're putting pressure on, and it should be done for love. You hope the viewers come, you hope the feedback comes, but you see, I'm only after 5 weeks. I've got 84 subscribers, which I think is, I can't believe that.
I think that's actually good for just over a month. Yeah.
I can't believe it. But again, this is the problem, isn't it? Then you suddenly change your expectations. But you've got to be careful because, as you know, and you've got more experience than me by a mile, that it's not going to just keep going at the same rate. So basically, just because I've got 84 today doesn't mean they won't go down. Doesn't mean I should end up with 100 next week. You know, that's pressure, isn't it? And then you're doing it for the wrong reasons. And so I'm trying all the time to stop myself from changing expectations because I think it would get in the way of just having a fun time. It's getting that balance right. But equally, I couldn't spend all these hours doing it if I only had 3 viewers. It's a funny one, isn't it? And I must admit, I've got to say before I forget, look at the difference between us two. I only dare do live shows with other Doctor Who fans. You have more courage because you have got writers, actor, you know, you are going for the big ones. And I wouldn't dare, right? Like you said, when you look back at how you question people, how you talk to them. I mean, I know Will Hadcroft, for example, we met him at Blackpool last year.
I'm jealous. Like I said, you British people have all the fun.
He was lovely. He was obviously there to sell that audio. And
the resurrection plant. Yeah, his audio is The Resurrection Plant, from the BBC Audio Originals. Excellent
Yes,
story. Excellent
yes.
story.
So we
Really
got
fun.
talking to him about that. And you know, he saw us helping Colin and Nicola during the day. So we had a little chat with him. But yeah, to imagine you, I mean, I can't imagine. I'm getting happier doing a live stream with panelists, but I cannot imagine contacting Katie Manning or contacting, you know, I forgot, gosh, Matthew Jacobs. I cannot imagine daring do that, expecting a response, and then interviewing them. I cannot imagine that.
It's really scary, to be perfectly honest. And when from what I've learned, the timing needs to be right. Because if you're going to do an interview with somebody, it needs to be focused on what they want to say. And when you don't know what they might like to talk about first, you need to learn.
Yeah.
Because the success rate of asking someone to do an interview is, let's just say it's not 100%. Okay. There may be people who just don't have time, but they're kind enough to tell you, thank you for the offer. I am busy. Or they just don't say anything, which is anyone's prerogative. Because when you're asking somebody to do an interview, you're asking them to take up some of their time for free. And
Yeah,
and
well,
and and so that's something that you have to know going in, that you may not even hear back at all. And one person that put it very well, which has helped me over the time,
yeah,
uh, it was Will Hadcroft, where he said, Greg, something that you probably need to think about is that doing interviews is just not some people's thing, so to speak. And that makes sense. Um, because if I look back at how nervous I was the first time interviewing Will Hadcroft, and you can have you have just related to that about being nervous. Well, what about the other people? You know,
yeah,
what if you're asking somebody to do an interview? Let's say that they have a book coming out Thursday. Well, that's a good time to ask them to do an interview because they want to talk about their new book. And the thing to that I try to always keep in mind is that they might be nervous about doing it, because this whole video chat thing that we're doing is relatively new technology still. Um, I think it became very popular during lockdown. I think COVID had a couple of silver linings. It allowed a lot of people to learn, or to have the ability to be able to work from home, such as people that are parents, where they could actually tend to their children while doing their full-time jobs by working from home. Um, that was a silver lining of COVID. And another is that it taught people how to use the technology that we have at its full speed. And, you know, if you look at the video that we're recording right now, 10 years from now, this will look really poor quality, because the internet speed will be there to where this could have been 4K.
yeah,
And
yeah.
and I, in summary, I try to realize that people might be nervous about doing them. So when you're asking someone to do an interview, it's going to be hit or miss. And
And also, sorry, and also you're fighting that factor, which is, I know as a teacher that if the kids sense that you're nervous, you're going to have a bad lesson because they don't trust you
really,
at all. So if you're appearing nervous, I know you don't now, but if you in the early days appeared nervous as I do on my channel, then especially with an actor or a writer, their suspicions must go up a bit, which is, I don't actually know this person. I mean, I'm not on the BBC or not on a certain American channel. This is just somebody who says they're a fan or this or that. I know they can check out your channel and there's research, or they could, but it's a bit like being a brand new teacher and you walk in and you establish yourself. If you'll come across nervous, they will start to look suspicious and not trust. And yes, you have to somehow, when you've maybe never met that person before, because it's all about dynamics and chemistry, you may set off the wrong vibe with them, or they might come to the interview with the wrong vibe. And if you bounce off each other in the wrong way, it's a hard interview, isn't it?
Yeah, that's very true. And you've just made me a lot more nervous.
Oh, no, no. You, I mean, I'm trying to imagine that moment when you've written to somebody and they say yes,
Oh
because that's
God.
when the problems start, isn't it?
Yeah, yeah, it's like, oh my God, what have I gotten myself into? But the thing is, the people that have asked to do interviews, I've really genuinely been interested in their works
Yeah,
or them as a person. And at the end of the day, people are just people.
yeah,
And it doesn't really matter how famous somebody is or how accomplished they are. At the end of the day, they're still just people. So
yeah.
so Brendan, where do you think your channel will be at a year from now? You think it'll be 1,000 subscribers or something like that?
Judging how it's gone, oh God, 1,000, that sounds a lot, doesn't it? um, it does sound a lot. Right, if I've got 80 odd in a month, this is the problem, isn't it? This is what I was saying. You can't just project it per month. I know that I'm going to hit a plateau. I may be hitting the plateau now. Um, I think we're having a meeting in the next few days where we're going to just discuss about what do we want to keep doing, what tweaks do we need to make. So I think we're more bothered about content and what we're delivering, and hope that, as you said, the next bit occurs. So I'm not setting a target because I think it's a dangerous one. Because as I said with Type 14, all these shows that I'm trying to emulate, you cannot just assume people will give 3 hours of their time willingly.
Mhm.
You have to capture them, you have to find them, you have to capture them, you have to keep them, and then you have to kind of nurture them forevermore. So that is a hell of a process. And so adding numbers on top of that frightens me to death. I'd love 1,000 subscribers, but I don't want to dare put a target on it because I really don't know what's around the corner.
Well, I'm already confident that you are going to hit 1,000 subscribers. I don't know when, but it will happen because uh, the show is enjoyable. It brings people together to discuss things of like interests, and that is that's a really powerful lure because there's so many good people in Doctor Who fandom,
Yeah.
and you are addressing that very niche of people like us. So I know you'll hit 1,000, and I wouldn't be surprised if it's a lot sooner than what you might expect. So got my fingers
Well, all we
crossed
can
for you.
say is we'll keep enjoying. I'm very aren't I lucky that you found the channel when we started? Because it's
Well,
serendipity.
I'm lucky, and I don't think it was anything I did. I think it was actually AI. I think it was YouTube's algorithm that realized, okay, well, this guy here must be interested in Doctor Who if he's typed Doctor Who into the search box about 1,000 times, and that's when I had been watching a lot of live streams,
Yeah.
and I remember I'm like, what is this? The sense sphere, and how do you say that? And and then I got on there. I'm like, wait a second, I've seen this guy. That is another Doctor Who fan right there, and the content and the discussion was great, and that's why I have continued to tune into it. You know, I watched your show that you did earlier today,
Yeah.
fantastic. I learned some things on there that I didn't know, and
Oh, Michelle.
yeah, yeah, from Michelle in particular, she noted a point in American history that I was unaware of, and I was shocked. So I was looking for some Doctor Who content uh, to enjoy with my coffee, and then I ended up learning a very surprising thing about American history that I didn't know. And I still wouldn't know that if it wasn't for your show and in seeing the people that you have on your panel there. And I think it's absolutely wonderful. And I'm glad that you were able to set the time aside to meet with me today. And I'm going to let you go because I know that it's really late there, and we've talked a lot longer than I was expecting.
Look,
So
we've got on. I've been dying to talk to you. Likewise.
thank you so much.
And you know, I wish the world was smaller sometimes, so I could just pop around and say hello properly. Um, but obviously, this is what's magic about this, and this is what's magic about starting your own channel, isn't it? That actually people reach out to you. I will. Bottom line is, I'll just say there are more warm people out there than cold people. There are some lovely people, but you have been one of those who've reached out. You sound as though you're almost a caring parent for the channel. You're very supportive, keeping the thread going. So it's a massive gratitude to you, especially. I've been dying to talk to you because putting faces to things, you know, it's great to, and you know, I have a lot of respect for what you've done. If only I could do a bit of that, that would be fantastic.
Thank you, Brendan. That is really kind. You have absolutely made my day. And stick around here. Let me go ahead and take this out. Folks, for any of you that have watched this that might have the interest in starting your own YouTube channel, as you can see, it is entirely possible. And I hope that you have learned something from watching or listening to this discussion today. And if you are listening in on audio, go ahead and go over to YouTube and search for the timescales Brendan Noble and find the original recording of this interview and go down to the description area and click the link for Brendan's channel. And you can go directly to his channel and see his content that we've been discussing, where he's been working on it for a little over a month now. So definitely go and check out the Sense Sphere and thank Brendan for his time. You know, he just spent well over an hour. I don't even know how long we've been talking. It may have been 2 hours. Brendan has just spent a lot of his time that he did not have to do. I asked him if I could please interview him because I was very curious to learn about what it is like to start a new YouTube channel. I wanted to know who he was, his involvement in fandom, and here, thanks to his kindness, we have learned. So thank him and go and check out his channel. And Brendan, was there anything that I did not ask you today that you wish I had?
I can't think of it. I've enjoyed this. I'm one of those people I can chat all day and all night, which is dangerous.
Okay.
But I appreciate the time you've given me. I really do. But I can't think of anything pressing. And I'm sure if we wanted to, we could do these things again. And you can come on my
Absolutely.
channel and all the rest of it. So no, I'm very happy, and you've been very kind.
Okay, awesome. Thank you so much. And I will see you around on the wires.
Certainly, definitely.
Okay. Take care, Brendan. Have a nice evening.
Yeah, evening, morning, whatever it is there. Bye.
Yep. Early afternoon. Cheers from California.
And cheers from Northern England.